Welcome back, everybody. Scott Stevens here with another look at some weather around the world. We've got some interesting action going on in the Atlantic. It's just this side of nuts. We've got 5 named storms out there. We'll show you where they are and what all of their names are. It's just kind of crazy. And then there's the West Coast where we still have the fires. Those have not gone anywhere over the course of the weekend. They've had a little bit of a break. The winds have kind of simmered down a little bit, so that's the good news. And then the rains just keep coming for China. They just keep coming. And these dams, they had to blow one, and we'll look at that in a moment. They had to blow one just to take some pressure off. So there's some struggles going on around the world, and it's interesting because in much of the western, in the West, it's dry. And if you go into the east, in Asia, it's rain. It's straight up rain and lots of it. And China began in late May, early June, and it just keeps going. So let's head over there shortly. And it's about the food. When is it not about the food? This is the farmer's greatest threat. You know, he's got his livelihood into it. He's got his investment. It's his seed, that either he buys from the company or he harvests and holds from year to year to year because he's got a strain that's really, really good to him. But in China, this has become an issue because we had the protein issue with the pigs, and the swine flu decimated 70% of their crop. And now we've had these relentless rains, and then we've had the typhoons roll into the northeastern part of the country, and that is where they grow the corn. And that is the crop that we're kind of concerned about right now is corn. And you look at some of these other hashtags, Great Reset, China Food, Famine, Grand Solar Minimum, Adapt 2030. These are kind of the things that when all combined, it comes down to calories. Time and time again, it comes down to calories. So there's another typhoon on the way. You can see South Korea here, North Korea here, and then this is the portion of China whereupon the corn has been grown. And then, of course, Japan is right in the neighborhood as well. There was some video maybe 10 days ago about a tropical storm rolling through and across this very same region and then clipping, I think it's Vladivostok, I don't get to say that very often, in southern Russia. And it was just blown away by those winds, and that's not something that they get very often. So then what happens when we deal with food? It is a pushback from the eaters. As Henry Kissinger said, the useless eaters. That's where the conflict is going to come. So we're going to watch that develop in slow motion, and then all of a sudden around the globe. So that's kind of the issue. And then this is a fascinating story about Three Gorges Dam and its peak largest ever inflow of 76,000 cubic meters, not cubic feet per second like we measure here in the States, but cubic meters, which is 9 times greater. Water entered Three Gorges Dam, but only 48,000 were released. So nearly half, well, maybe 3/4 of what was able to come in had to be retained, or half of what came in had to be retained. So that's a fairly substantial number. And then when you consider that the dam is already some 50 feet above its maximum fill line, they're concerned. They're very, very concerned about how much water and then the safety of this 1.5 mile long dam. And then they can only release so much without endangering the structure itself, and then also just increasing the flooding downstream. So we've got some issues there. All right, 6 hours ago, Hurricane Hunter aircraft finds that Sally has strengthened into a hurricane with 85-mile-an-hour max sustained winds. A special advisory to follow. This is also from the NHC and showing you couple hours ago where all of these hurricanes are and just how active it is. And there's some interesting behavior that we're beginning to notice, 2020 being the perfect example of why ACE, it's available convective energy, doesn't really mean anything. All of these rapid intensification of hurricanes right near land are much more concerning than all of that energy that's dissipated over the ocean, because then this impacts our neighborhoods, our infrastructure, our livelihoods. And this is what has been very, very unusual about all of these storms. I guess it was, here was the list: Hannah, Isaias, Laura, Nana, and Sally, all rapidly intensified just at and prior to landfall. A few places that could actually use a little bit of rain, and that being the western U.S. Maybe not 10 inches, but 2 would do. 2 would be a start, and then once the soils have kind of loosened up and got a little water, and then maybe we can throw a little more out there. But the National Interagency Fire Center Support personnel continue to work toward containment of 87 large fires that have burned more than 4.6 million acres across 10 states. Residents near 39 large fires in California, Oregon, and Washington remain under evacuation orders. So there's a lot of folks under evacuation. So 2 new ones, 4 have been contained, and then there's the burn, and then the state-by-state breakdown with California doing 25, Oregon 13, Idaho now with 12 fires. And just a week ago, it was but a fraction of that. The heat, though, is gone, and that's the good news for the West. That high-pressure center has finally been beaten back. The big, strong high that then allowed the deep cold to come into the Midwest and now has been completely absorbed into the jet stream way over far eastern Canada. Record highs today, maybe 2 in Idaho. LLJ is Chalice and S&T is Stanley, 91 and 83. But otherwise, it's really a fairly temperate week, both on the warm and the cold. If there are a number set of records, it would be some warm nights out ahead of an inbound Pacific event that may bring us a little bit of rainfall. 111 Death Valley yesterday, and 21 Peterson, Utah for the national extremes. And then there's the Atlantic with Teddy, Vicky, Renee, Paulette, and Sally. Sounds like a quintuplet, a group. Let's just have them sing. But nonetheless, that's the scattering of the storm with Renee as the remnants still named, and it is beginning to spin down. Teddy just named today with sustained winds of 45 knots or gusting to 50. And then good old Vicky, sustained winds at 40 knots up towards 45 with center pressure of 1,002 millibars. And then Sally's the big boy, big gal, I guess I should say, as she approaches landfall. Anything in the Pacific? Gariana, just one little guy or gal. So here's the water vapor in the Atlantic. How bad to compare to Laura? Probably not quite with the winds since it is so close to landfall. We'll look at the radar in just a moment, but it's almost the same space, isn't it? Very similar area. That Gulf Coast has been hit kind of frequently, and 'tis the season. Through September is that. But the good thing is the jet stream looks like it's going to get a little more active, and in doing that kind of suppresses the mid-level high, or what would be the Bermuda high. It's going to drive it a little bit farther south, and then that should recurve the bulk of these up into the North Atlantic rather than having a gateway open for them to move on ashore. So that's kind of that's the upside to this. Let's animate this. Let's see if this grabs or doesn't. But there we go. So Sally really blew up as it got closer and closer, and you can see the shield and it just really becoming an event. As it gets very close to landfall, it is not that far away. Certainly by this time tomorrow, it'll be long inland and weakening. And then Paulette just kissing Bermuda. And then these other guys down below with, let's come back to the Atlantic over here. With Teddy and Vicky will be the ones we'll watch probably later in the week. But Paulette obviously out into the North Atlantic. Sally to do her raining out. And then the rest, Vicky and Teddy will watch. In fact, we'll be able to see them in the forecast models, being recurved to the north and east. The other story is the smoke. There's just so much smoke. It's like the Four Corners area and then parts of Texas, has been spared the smoke today. And I kind of thought these plumes would have closed a little bit better. And unfortunately, I'm down in this area where we still have good conditions, but still lots of smoke all the way from from the border of Mexico all the way up into British Columbia, dealing with the smoke, and then it has to come over the ridge and then dissipate and filter out and get kind of diluted. That's the only thing you could do with it, is just eventually dilute it. And they're going to burn through the night. We really, as we get into the forecast, we'll be able to see when the rains come, but it is decidedly towards the end of the month. And then here's the landfall with Mobile Bay here, Pensacola. Nearby, they're under the gun now. And let's look at temperatures. This was this morning. Nice Gallup, 37. Alamosa, 35. Montrose, about 35. I guess that could be Telluride. Don't know exactly. But very, very cool in the upper Midwest and the Rockies. And then it warmed up this afternoon rather nicely. And where we have the showers and thunderstorms, temperatures even in the afternoon in West Texas, rather comfortable. So nationally, some rains in the Seattle area. That's kind of good news. Kind of see if we have any arsonists up there that want to be throwing Molotov cocktails in the forest. We can, at least if they're going to toss them, that'll be falling on wet soil. That's the upside to that. And then you can see deep into Texas, Brownsville, Corpus, South Padre, and so forth. But it's down here that we're interested in. This guy, as Sally approaches. Pensacola's right there, and it's not far away. It really isn't. We'll probably see the eye wall make landfall later on tonight as it's just slowly moving to the west-northwest, it appears. So that's kind of the big news with big training thunder showers. No flood warnings out just yet. We're still dealing with the hurricane issue, the storm surge, the 5 to probably 12 feet. And the other thing that is complicating this is new moon. We're really approaching new moon, and that's the one that accentuates the tides. So new moon and full moon both, just depends on what side of the earth you're decide. What is it? Pulling against the sun or pulling with the sun? And with new moons, it's pulling with the sun. So both objects are in alignment with the sun rather than one being the earth being between the two. So the humidity has been compressed down to the southeastern states, and the cool is in place in the northeast and the Great Lakes states and Canada. Only just 50s even at this hour, and even some 40s as we get into the northern part of the provinces, with north winds really pushing in behind this new developing low up in near Williston, North Dakota. And that's gonna drag down another round of cool air off in that direction. So let's take a look at temperatures at or above the normals. Yeah, they do, Karen, don't they? They're kind of cool. Those satellite pictures, just the imagery is so good. It's so different than what it was when I was a kid. All right, let's load this through, and what we're looking at are temperatures compared to normal as we get out 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. And the west stays kind of warm. We get another slug of cool air dropping down into the southeastern states, another round of heat in the upper Midwest, the middle prairies of Canada, right around the end of the month. And then finally, and I want to pop over onto this one, we begin to get some rainfall. Let's see if we can't load up the latest animation and then bring that in. So finally, these really drought-stricken, hot, dry areas with the soil moisture just very, very short. We begin to get some moisture in here, but it is towards the end of the month. And even then, this model keeps a lot of it offshore, so really not enough to really do any good for the firefighters. Maybe just the cool, higher humidities, and then lessening of winds would be enough, but it's not enough to reduce the threat or diminish the threat. In Oregon, yes, a half inch to an inch will go a great distance in moistening and up and wetting the fuels. But this Four Corners area doing a little bit better. That's kind of the unfortunate side of thing, is just that the dryness is going to stick around, and the heat too. We had our cool spell, and now we're back to the warmth out over the 8 to 14 day period. So that's going to be kind of the game the firefighters are playing, with a little bit of help from Mother Nature, not as much as we could have, not as much as we would like to have, but there's definitely a little assistance there. So when we come back here right at the top of the hour, we've got some things coming in the world. Part of it is food related. Other is going to be infrastructure that's impacted. But then it really comes down to a leadership through the times that we're going in. The United States going through a bit of an election where we're given a choice. And are we really given a choice? I believe we are, but are we choosing the best options? Maybe that's the better way to frame the question. And what do we desire? What do we want in a leader? I mean, what would serve us at this point? Instead of us serving the government, maybe it's time for, what did Kennedy say? Or FDR asked, it was Kennedy. What can you do for your country versus, that one? Ask not what you can do for your country, but what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And that's kind of where things are. We are at a point, a crossroads. A decision point is going to be made here in the next couple of weeks. And it's really going to determine greatly which road we go down. And nobody's really got a clear crystal ball of what's happening. But there's some very curious prophecies out there. And we kind of want to explore some of those. All right, I'll see you at 6 o'clock. Good old York, PA. Mild temperatures, gentle wind, windows open every night. I agree. Even though there's the threat of bears pushing on through. No, we keep the upstairs windows open. All right, guys, have a great evening, and I'll see you in a little bit. And in the meanwhile, keep looking up.